Hello and welcome to my channel Inch by Inch Art. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made this corpseflower mini. So I'm using some particle board that I've cut to size. This is a large creature, so it's 2" by 2" square, and I'm using a ball of aluminum foil for my armature. This is a stamp. You can see how I've made these stamps and ones like them in another video. It's just of a skull so that I can show you how I'm going to make the creepy skulls that are hidden inside the plant. I'm using some wire as an armature for the root legs that are going to stick out of the bottom of the plant. And I'm just pressing them into the aluminum foil ball. I decided 5 seemed like a good number of limbs, and I tried to position them so it will have a bit of movement where it's going to lean forward in one direction. Here I'm just taking some Sculpey and I'm covering the entire aluminum foil ball and pressing in really closely to those wire limbs. Now I'm just making a worm of clay and using my fingers to roll out basically cone shape and using my silicone sculpting tool to press in indentations that will be leaf veins. I'm covering the armature from bottom to top with leaves, but I'm leaving some sections blank and I'm leaving the top blank because this is where the flowers and vines and skulls will be. I do a bunch of different layers of leaves, and I know that I want it to be larger on the bottom, so I'm bulking it up quite a bit with overlapping leaves. It could just be me, but it looks kind of like an artichoke. Here I'm using a different color of Sculpey. It's just a grayish, brownish green color. This is going to be my vines. My first vines are very thick and are down at the base, and I'm still leaving some blank areas on the green that have no texture or anything, because again, I'm going to have little creepy skulls there. And I'm just putting the vines all over, coming out from where the leaves are and working their way up towards the top. I'm using my silicone sculpting tool to press the vine clay on and to give it a bit of a texture, making it look like it's been twisted, like vines that climb up trunks do. Here I'm just showing how I made the skulls. So I take a white piece of Sculpey and I press it into my skull stamp, and then I'm using an X-Acto blade to just slice the skull impression off of the ball of clay that I've pressed into my stamp. You can also make the stamped image, in this case the skull, look quite different by either cutting different pieces off, so how I only do part of a skull, sometimes only a jaw, or sometimes half a head, or you can manipulate the ball that you press into the stamp and either make it longer or thinner and kind of smush it around. It's an easy way to make the stamped object not look the same as all the others. And here you can see I'm adding the skulls onto my blank spots of the green clay that I didn't put any texture on. Since it's a corpse flower that has corpses in the plant, I figured it made sense to have the skulls sort of embedded and hidden in the leaves and vines, like it had grabbed people and sucked them inside. just using the ball end of my tool to sort of push in a little bit of details on the skulls to give it a little bit more depth for the eyes and nose. And here I'm adding more vines, but these are skinnier, more tendrily vines that are grasping and encasing the skulls. See all my wormy vines? So the corpseflower depiction in the book has these weird yellow bulbous flowers at the top. So I sort of mimicked that with some yellow Sculpey, and I'm just putting a little bit of petal details in with my silicone sculpting tool and twirling it around to just give it an interesting look. I'm just pressing these onto the top. I haven't baked this at all yet, so everything's still tacky and easy to press onto itself. And once I've got a good number of flower buds, I'm going to add some more tendrils, but I want them to be sort of reaching out at the characters and look like they're either trying to grab them or whip them or something like that. So I'm just doing some thick worms of clay that taper to a point at the end and then sort of posing them in different ways and having them stick off a little bit, not too much, because I don't want them to break off. And if I go too far out, they definitely will break because they don't have any kind of armature in them. Now moving on to the roots. Just rolled out a brown worm of clay and I'm trying to press them on as well as I can to the wire armature. Couldn't really decide if they were roots or trunks, but I guess they're kind of roots. I sort of imagine this thing as like a bush that sits on the ground and then uproots itself out of the dirt and chases down adventurers. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it's what I decided in my head. And once those are done, I bake it. Here it is all baked. Just started to be in the oven slightly too long. You can see the very ends of those tendrils are slightly different color than they were before. They almost look kind of reddish, but they're actually slightly brown. Same thing with the flower buds. The very tip started to brown, but it's no big deal because I'm going to be adding some red paint. So the depiction of the corpseflower, those flower buds are yellow, but then they have red tips on the top, so I decided to use the same paint, so it's sort of up for interpretation as to whether or not they're flower buds with blood on them or they're actually colored red. And then I'm adding some extra red paint to the skulls because, again, it's a corpseflower, so I wanted it to be like bloody and creepy looking. And now I'm just doing a black wash. This is just really watered down black acrylic paint. For some reason, it didn't really work well on the one clay that I used for the thick tendrils that stick out. I don't know if you noticed, but it's kind of spotted. I actually didn't mind the way this looked. It looked kind of cool, like almost reminded me of how like octopus and squid have like spotted skin, or even like slugs. I guess there's some like leopard slugs and stuff that have spotted skin. But I did go back and add a little bit more black paint and less water and tried to add more of a shadow. I don't think I filmed it though. So once I've got a good amount of black wash on, I'm going back and doing my red again because I really want to boost that blood effect that I was going for. And this is just straight acrylic paint, again adding it to my skulls and the tips of my tendrils and the flower buds. And now for my base, I'm going back over just the black that I'd done before after I've glued down the mini, which I just used E6000 for because it was quick. And I'm just doing kind of a dry brush of like a muddy brown color. And here you can see I'm going to use some Mod Podge, and I'm just going to go over the parts that I want to look slimy. So I'm going to do all the parts that I decided were definitely blood. I don't do the flower tips because I hadn't made up my mind if it was blood or not, and decided in the end just not to do it. But I do all the tips of the tendrils that are reaching out, all of the parts on the skulls, and then I do the roots and the base because I've decided that it's probably in like a swampy area or somewhere that's kind of wet and boggy, so it's probably like muddy dirt. So I'm just putting a real thick coat on here. It's also helped the fiberboard base stay strong, a bit reinforced with the Mod Podge. So now for a bit of an adventure. I decided that the base was kind of boring and I wanted to jazz it up a bit. So I went outside to find things in nature that would look good on my base. And I found this stuff on this tree. Some kind of lichen, I think. It was quite dry and it looked really good. It was actually perfect. Looking for plants. Tiny, preferably dry plants. So I couldn't be bothered to go to any kind of craft store and buy dry plant stuff. Checking my driveway. Oh, this is mossy stuff on the ground. Surely moss will work. That was kind of wet. Trying to find some that's drier. This bit seems a bit dry. I like that green. All this stuff's real dry. This was good. Trying to break off the dirt. Don't need the dirt. Score. Back inside, let the stuff dry out for a few days just because it was a little bit moist and I really didn't want any moisture or issues, or if there were any hidden bugs, who knows. Anyway, so liquid Sculpey on my base. So again, it was too flat and boring, so I want to jazz it up. And I'm taking my little wire brush tool and some brown Sculpey, and I'm just putting it on the liquid Sculpey so that it holds it in place, and then I'm stabbing it a ton of times with my wire brush to make it look like a dirty, muddy texture. Since, as I mentioned before, I imagine the corpseflower sort of like pulls itself up out of the ground, like uproots itself, and then attacks and lunges and chases adventurers, I decided that the dirt would be heaped up around the outside and potentially around those like outer branches, or not branches, roots, but then like there's kind of like a pit in the middle. Like I don't bother to put any clay down in the center because I wanted it to look deeper and more like it was a hole that it had pulled its mass out of. So this dirt that I do is only going to be on the roots that are coming up and around the edges. And you can really manipulate this stuff pretty well with that wire brush. So I've got some like dirt clumps falling off and dirt clumps stuck to it and whatnot. And then I'm going to add some plants because it's probably in some kind of planted area, forest, I don't know. Like I said, before I was thinking swamp, but I don't know where the hell it is. It's where there's plants. So I thought it would be cool and add a bit of extra accent to put more tendril vine things up it. and I'm gonna bake it again. Now that my amazing dirt is all dried and cured, I'm just doing a brown wash again to give it like a muddy, dirty look. And my browns weren't all the same color, so I thought if I used a good brown wash, it would sort of make it look a little bit more like it's the same dirt, but it would still have a little bit of undertones of different colors because of the different browns and greens I had used for my dirt. And here's some more E6000 I'm just going to use to glue on all my little dry treasures that I found outside. These perfect little planty things that I found in the great outdoors. And I just sort of trimmed the top of the moss off so there were no like roots and dirt and stuff. And then I just let it dry.